This video is going to focus on the four explanations or like theories of how the early political states were sort of like formed, right? So we'll sort of use the word government, right? So like how were like the early government spread? Like how was government expanded, right? And there's four general theories. One relates more to the explanation of American government. So the first is like the evolutionary theory of government. This is the idea that government really sort of like came out of the family and then evolved from there, as the name implies. Like there were rules and regulations, and then as families spread, there were rules and regulations that like spread with the spreading of the families. So the key word is family. It's like there's this relationship between the early rules and regulations and like the family unit and the spread of the family from like a smaller area to like a larger area. The second is called force theory. This is the idea that governments and rules and regulations in early political states basically spread as a result of like one person or area conquering another. And as they conquered them, they forced them to live a certain way. And this caused certain ideas about government to spread or certain rules and regulations to spread. And Napoleon's a great example of this, right? Like basically like marched across Europe, conquered a bunch of different areas, and forced his ideas of government upon other people, right? So this is another theory of how government spread and formed. The next one is the idea of divine right theory. You maybe remember talking about this in other social studies or history classes. And this is the idea that politics kind of came from religion, and that political leaders were often seen as being religious leaders, or at minimum, they were ruling because God gave them blessing to rule, or some sort of higher divine power, as the name implies, gave them the right to rule. This clearly is not the way that the American system of government works, because we have that separation of church and state. But there are some areas in which still the religious leaders are considered to be the political leaders and vice versa. So this one's not super relevant to the United States either. I'm going to skip that, right? So the one that's most relevant to the American system of government is the social contract theory. The social contract theory was first written by a British philosopher named John Locke in 1690 when he wrote an essay called A Second Treatise on Government. And this is the idea that people voluntarily formed and joined governments so that their lives and their property would be protected. That if people lived without any kind of government, you'd be in danger because there'd be no rules and regulations to protect you. So, like, why do citizens voluntarily give up some of their freedom? You live in a government, you know you don't have complete freedom because you have to follow lots of rules and regulations. And it's because you joining a government, even though you're giving up some of your freedom, the government in exchange is going to protect you, protect your lives, protect your property, protect your rights. But it's a contract. It's like a deal, right? You give up some of your freedom and they protect you, right? But if the people give up some of their freedom to the government and the government like violates the deal, they break the contract, that they don't protect your rights. Instead, they take them away or they harm them or they put them in jeopardy. You have the right to revolt as a people and no longer like follow that government because they broke the deal, right? And this is like the one that's most relevant to American government, because this idea was used by Thomas Jefferson as like the explanation for why we were declaring our independence from England. The entire intro to the Declaration of Independence is just acknowledging and restating Locke's social contract theory. Like, we are revolting against the British. We are declaring our independence because they violated the social contract. They started taking away the rights of the people living in the colonies instead of protecting them, and therefore the colonists were justified in forming a new government. So this one is the one that's most relevant to like the development of the American government.